All right, and good morning. Hey, something's going funny with the chat overlay there. I don't know what the deal is there. Let me see if I can. Y'all bear with me half a tick, and let me see if I can fix that. Weird. Okay, so there's this random blue bar across the bottom of the screen for some. I don't know what's going on there. Good morning, good morning. So it is Friday. That means Firearms Friday. And I see GCM. Good morning, brother. Ma and Trish are in there. Good morning, ladies. Good morning. Love you. Thanks for joining us this morning. And it is Firearms Friday. And I don't know what the hell is going on with that blue bar across the bottom of the screen. It's oh well, I guess we'll just have to roll with it. So, guys, I've had my fill of talking about Afghanistan and how big a failure Joe Biden is. I want to do something fun. Let's celebrate the Second Amendment a little bit today. What do you say? So we're going to start with. Well, see, now the blue bar's over there, and I don't know what the hell's going on. Oh, it's the chat. There's something wrong with the input from the chat channel. Okay, I can fix. Well, I guess that's just going to have to. There we go. There we go. There. I think I fixed it. Ma says clear the scoreboard. Right you are. Right you are. Right you are. There we go. All right. So, our first story this morning. Man pulls machete on driver who fatally struck girlfriend on Northside Road. SAPD says. Woman disregarded red light before car struck, killed her, police say. Good Lord. Okay, that's, all right. Y'all know I try not to read the headlines, and I definitely don't read the articles before we start this, so, because the point is to kind of do it on the fly. I want to be a little bit surprised with the rest of you guys, and you know, we do the general analysis as we go through. And caveat, I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm not a law enforcement officer. So you'll have to take what I say about this stuff with a bit of a grain of salt. That said, I am a veteran. I am a scholar, so I know this material well, but I'm not professionally obligated to your advice. Roger? So, San Antonio police say a woman was killed while riding her bicycle Thursday morning, and then her boyfriend pulled a machete on the driver of the car that hit her. The driver was taking his two children to school when he hit the woman on her bike at the intersection of Wurzbach Parkway and North Wedner Road. Wow, they got some words in Texas, don't they? Yeah, come on. After the woman's boyfriend pulled a machete on the driver, another driver who witnessed the accident pulled out a handgun to defuse the situation. That driver has a concealed handgun permit, police said. No one else was injured during the incident. That driver has a concealed handgun permit, police said. This article comes to us from... Where's the date? Oh, there we go. Published August 19th, updated August 19th. Okay, so the article's from August 19th, so the incident was probably on August, the day before or a day or two before. It mentions that the driver had a concealed carry permit, concealed handgun permit. So they're in Texas. And if I'm not mistaken, Texas went constitutional carrier earlier this year. Let's see. What you need to know about... So let's take a quick peek at a little something about... Oh, hey. You pop back over there, and I'll just disable that comments block for us. There we go. And I'll sneak over to the other side of the screen now, based on the position of the article. So, on June 16th, 2021, Governor Greg Abbott signed HB 1927, the Firearm Carry Act of 2021, commonly known as the Constitutional Carry Bill, into law. HB 1927 will allow legally eligible gun owners 20 years and older to carry their firearms without a Texas license to carry. But before you start carrying your everyday carry gun openly or concealed without an LTC, there are several things you should know. Does not go into effect, although it has been officially signed, it does not go into effect until September 1st. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. I see Sergeant Major's joined us, Anarchy's with us now, and there's Alex. Hey, Alex, you tuned in just in time. So this article is actually somewhat instructive. So this is taking place in Texas, which did sign constitutional carry. Greg Abbott signed it into law. Who can carry under HB 1927? You must be 21 years of age or older. With some exceptions, you must be able to legally purchase and possess handguns under both federal and Texas law. Can't have been convicted within the last 5 years of certain misdemeanor crimes, or you will be disqualified. Those misdemeanor crimes are assault causing bodily injury, deadly conduct. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard deadly conduct listed as a misdemeanor crime. I mean, I'm not complaining. I guess I can see how that works. That's but it seems extraordinarily vague. Terroristic threat, disorderly conduct, discharge, or disorderly conduct display. You cannot carry without a license until 5 years have elapsed from the date of conviction. And Texas residency is not required. So presumably that means that once the law is in effect, you or I, I'm a Georgia resident. If I'm in Texas, I don't need a Texas carry license. Now, and I'm not certain about this, but I think Georgia has reciprocity with Texas on concealed licenses. Generally, we do have reciprocity in Georgia with several states for our CCWs. But it is interesting and important to note, and this is where I say it's somewhat instructive, although officially, like I said, signed, it does not go into effect until September 1st. So here we go. This story happened just a day or two ago. Sergeant Major asks a good question. Why was the other guy carrying a machete? It doesn't say in the article. It says no charges are expected to be filed against the driver or the boyfriend. The police said the driver who struck the woman had a green light at the time of the accident. Police said the woman disregarded a red light as she was crossing Wurzbach Parkway. It doesn't say anything about the boyfriend saying why he had the machete or anything like that. I guess, Alex, why wouldn't you carry a machete? That's a reasonable question, too. Okay, funny story time. We had an event for the Girl Scouts. I now have my big knife back in the truck. I usually keep a big knife and a little spare ammo in the truck. It just makes sense. And by big knife, I mean one that's good enough to do some real work with. And I'm not talking about wet work necessarily. I'm talking about a knife that, in a pinch, I've got a large enough knife that I can, peel off a little bit of kindling and start a bonfire if, I don't know, there's an ice apocalypse and somebody gets stranded on the side of the road for a frickin' month while we wait for Georgia to figure out how to start a snowplow. A knife that is serviceable. I am personally of the opinion that every grown man, and I do mean every grown man, right, and to a lesser extent every grown woman, should always, 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 without exception, have on your person a timepiece, and I don't mean your phone doesn't count. A watch with hands on it, right? Because it's one thing not to know what time it is. It's an entirely other thing not to have some mechanism for navigation when you're out, if you get lost and stranded in the woods, right? So you should always have a timepiece. A pocket knife, right? Nope, Trish, Fitbit doesn't count. It needs to have the hands on it so that you can use it as an impromptu compass. The one I wear happens to also be a compass, but that's just a little. I mean, I bought it for that reason. I used this watch to call fire missions in Afghanistan, so I would get my distance, direction, and all that off of, and even elevation off of this watch. Alex, an Apple Watch does have a compass on it. Yes, it does. And it also has a 1-day battery life. It's insufficient. I like the Apple Watch. It's a fantastic little toy. But as far as making you a more survivable person, it's not sufficient. But anyway, timepiece, cash, not a debit card, not a checkbook, cash money, right? I make it a point to always have a $100 bill on my person for emergencies, because you just never know. Cash. A pocket knife. Now, a pocket knife, I'm not talking about a great big old Bowie knife. You're not looking to get in a sword fight with Crocodile Dundee. Something like a multi-tool, like a little Leatherman type of thing, little skelly tool. This'll do the trick. Right? Now, when I was deployed, when I was in Afghanistan, I always had 4 of these on me. And I even got a little guff every now and then. Oh, well, it seems like overkill. Yeah, it seems like overkill until you're operating a big, heavy piece of machinery, complex electronic equipment out in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden I have to send 3 privates in 3 different directions to do 3 different tasks which require a screwdriver, something like that. I required my soldiers to carry one just in case, but every now and then I'd have to borrow somebody else's privates, and at least 2, deployed at least 2, because you got to get on both sides of the nut and bolt to work something loose or do something like that. And then in daily carry, I don't even necessarily say you got to have a Leatherman. I carry one generally, but at least a pocket knife. You got to at least be able to eat an apple. I think Matt has said it best. I always carry a knife just in case there's cake or somebody needs stabbing. And a firearm. Let's see, did I cover it? A watch, a knife, cash, a firearm, and a cigarette lighter. A book of matches. I'll give you a book of matches, but a cigarette lighter or one of those little camping fire starters, something you can start a fire with easily. Now, if you've got any survival skills at all, on the base level, you could probably start a fire given nothing. Right? If I'm lost in the woods, and it just has to happen, I can start a fire with nothing. I prefer not to have to resort to that, right? If I've got a pocket knife and a cigarette lighter, I can get a pretty good campfire going real damn quick. Alex, I like the idea of the handheld light. I do. And it is something that I keep in my in reach, and I keep in my kit on my daily person as well. I don't necessarily call it a requirement. It's handy. Honestly, you start talking about getting to the survival situation, it's a quality of life thing. But I have little tactical flashlights laying around all over the place. Most of them are of the baby punching variety, where they've got the castle brick on the end of them, so you can, shatter a window or eliminate a threat. Now, that said, a couple weeks ago, and here's the funny story part, we had a Girl Scout barbecue thing. They build it as a barbecue. I think picnic is more correct. And all the Girl Scout moms brought chips and soda pop and all that stuff. Well, the wife and I had volunteered to bring sandwiches. We got a couple of those giant submarine sandwiches from not Costco. Damn it, the one BJ's. We got a couple of those giant submarine sandwiches from BJ's up there, and I just went, picked up the sandwiches, and went to the park, and we put them out on the table. And we had paper plates, plastic forks, and all that stuff laid out. The sandwiches weren't cut into pieces; they were just straight up 3-foot long hoagies. And they were 9 inches wide. They were big ass sandwiches. They were exactly what we ordered, but I didn't know they were going to come uncut. And thankfully, one of the other dads there just happened to have his big Bowie knife, his big hunting knife in his truck with him. So we were able to make do. And honestly, I used to always keep one of my big hunting knives in the truck. Just, that's just the kind of thing that comes up. That's just something that happens. And a big Bowie knife can solve a lot of problems. Not just, it's not just a great way to deal with a bank robbery, but sometimes you need a thing to cook with, or to cut a sandwich with, or cake, or, somebody needs stabbing. So definitely put one of my hunting knives back in the truck after that. I don't know why I don't even know why I didn't have one in the truck at the time. I almost always did. Anyway. So the other dad with a Bowie knife saved my ass that morning. So let's move on. And as far as why this, honestly, says she was riding her bicycle when she got hit. I'm going to guess that this probably took place near the home, and maybe he just ran out and grabbed, that was the thing, that was the weapon that was handy in the garage as he ran out to see what was going on. But that's pure speculation. And I only go that far on the speculation because it doesn't seem like he rode up in his Jeep or his pickup truck, where I wouldn't be surprised for there to be a machete either. So, oh no! Oh, there we go. For a second there, I thought we weren't going to have another story. Wild video shows Phoenix homeowner shooting at men trying to rob him. And I want y'all to take a look right here. Do you recognize these men? Oh, that last one. It needs a score, but nobody got shot. It sounds like that's a case where the firearm was used effectively to prevent the loss of life without the firearm being fired. So let me talk about that for a minute, because that's a sticky wicket. It is a crime in most states. I know here in Georgia. I don't know about Texas, but it's a reasonable leap. It is a crime to brandish a firearm. Now, that gets a little touchy if you're brandishing in self-defense. One of the reasons that the statistics are fuzzy on firearms, the CDC estimates between, I haven't looked at it recently, but it's a ridiculously high number, like between 3 and 5 million armed self-defense cases in the United States. And the reason there's such a broad gap in that data is because the vast majority of armed self-defense cases go unreported, right? Homeboy rolls up on you in the alleyway with a big knife and says, "Give me your wallet," and you pull out your gun and say, "No," and he runs away. Well, you put your gun back. Well, there's a few reasons for that. One, nothing happened. Now, that's not true, but your immediate emotional response in that situation is, no, nothing happened. Bad guy tried to do something. I showed him my gun, and then he didn't do the bad thing that he was going to do. Right? So, I'm done here. But you're not. In theory, you should call the police and report an attempted robbery, right? Because that bad guy that didn't do the bad thing to you is likely going to go and try to do the bad thing to somebody else. So it's great that you defended yourself, that you protected yourself from the bad guy, and you get to come out the other side in good shape. However, you've just let the bad guy go. Right? So the adage, the only thing required for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing, is absolutely true. If we just sit back and watch evil men do evil things, like, mutilating children or murdering women for not dressing appropriately on their way to the terrorist-controlled airport in the middle of a U.S. crisis, of a U.S.-caused crisis, then, well, that's how evil wins, is you let it. But there's also the concern that if you report that situation, guys, I hate to say this, I honestly want to be a back the blue guy, because I do believe in the rule of law. I believe in the rule of a very limited, narrow law. But there is no law without an enforcement mechanism. In theory, the police should be an institution which is revered and respected for its high honor and its deep obligation to a very, very sacred duty. In theory. The reality is that is not the case with a lot of our police officers. Many of our police officers are so ignorant of the law that it just absolutely defies credulity to even expect them to process minor complaints correctly. And for a lot of them, they don't want to explore the problem. A man assaulted by a woman who strikes her once in self-defense, for example, if she goes and files a complaint, he's going to have a hell of a time making the self-defense claim. It is what it is. Many officers will not even investigate. They'll take one person's word, and then once they've begun the process off one person's report, then if the alleged attacker is actually a victim, well, that person has been started down a path where it's going to be very, very difficult to correct that false narrative. And I have to be careful about this. This is not a topic I had intended to get into. But looks like we're just going to deal with that one story with the guy with the machete and the other guy that pulled a gun on him today, because I'm down that rabbit hole now, and I'm gonna button that up a bit. So, yeah, Alex, hello, citizen. I have no probable cause, but may I see your ID anyway? Exactly. Every cop ever. Yeah. I don't know of many states. New York had it for a while, but most states, this one included, the state of Georgia, are not stop and ID states. Not even liberal California is actually a stop and ID state. And what we mean, what is meant by that, stop and ID, is for an officer to require you to hand over your ID. He has to present you with a reasonable, articulable suspicion that you are committing, have committed, or are about to commit a crime. So, just walking up to you on the street and asking you for your ID. Now, at the point, hey, hi, citizen, can I see your ID? That's just a request. Now, it's an unreasonable request. It's an absurd request. Without any probable cause, without any reasonable, articulable suspicion. It's bizarre. And frankly, if a police officer ever walks up to you and without giving you any reason, without articulating a suspicion that justifies a lawful involuntary detainment of your person, If he walks up and demands ID and refuses to say you're being detained, you should call the police and tell them that you're being harassed by a vigilante pretending to be a police officer, because that officer has completely vitiated his lawful authority by abusing it. And that's not an opinion. That is the law. Now, the law is an interesting thing, especially where it starts to chew on our rights. So, going back to the brandishing thing. Brandishing is a crime. It gets a little fuzzy if you brandish after someone else has initiated an assault, right? So in police proceedings and legal proceedings for the question of things like a self-defense claim, for example, there is the primary attacker, the primary aggressor, right? It matters who initiated violence. So an example that we've talked about, we went over it several times talking about the Ahmaud Arbery case, but in that context. But the cleanest example, take a liquor store, or a gas station. We'll go with gas station. So you got a gas station. A couple of thugs come in, weapons drawn, firearms brandished, and shout, "Get down, give me all your money," in the gas station. The attendant then pulls a firearm, right? Uncle Irving with a shotgun pulls a firearm from under the counter and blasts the suspects, blasts the robbers, right? Let's say it's even a great situation. He manages to kill one, but the other one gets a round off and kills the storekeeper, kills the clerk. Police arrive. They manage to catch the robber that survived. Fast forward to the day in court. And the robber decides to try and use self-defense as his affirmative defense on the murder beef. Now, he may already know that he's going down for 5 to 10 on the robbery charge, armed robbery. Maybe I don't know what the usual sentence is for armed robbery off the top of my head, but he may know that he's going down for that, but he may think that he can beat the murder beef, because he shot and killed the clerk. But you cannot use self-defense as an affirmative defense against, if you are in the act of committing a felony already, if you're in the act of committing a crime. So in that case, because he came in there to rob the place, clear intent, weapon drawn, give me your money, all that, and then even though the clerk pulled a gun and tried to kill him with that gun, the criminal initiated the entire situation that made the clerk need to defend himself. So the only person that has a claim of self-defense as an affirmative defense in that prosecution is, of course, the clerk, who was clearly the victim. Right? So, similarly with brandishing, many of these self-defense situations are going to continue to go unreported. Now, and I'm not saying that the law should allow us to just draw a gun in public and wave it around. There are no laws relating to guns, relating to your ability to keep and carry a firearm, which are tolerable under the Constitution or to the sensibilities of any free men. How that said, and this is not an exception to that rule, it is reasonable to place restrictions on the use of firearms in public. For example, I have no problem at all with murder being illegal on the day-to-day. But here's the thing about that. And this makes it a little fuzzy on the brandishing thing too, because brandishing is not guns specifically, weapons generally. Brandishing, there's a certain level of subjectivity to what it means to brandish a weapon. And that's a problem with the law as well. Also a problem with the language and definitions. But as far as making something like murder illegal, that is not a restriction on your right to keep and bear arms. That's a restriction on your right to conduct specific activities. And not every murder is done with a firearm. So a prohibition on murder is not an infringement of your Second Amendment rights. A prohibition on brandishing gets a little tricky, because what if I am approached by a man with a knife in an alley, I draw my firearm and tell him, no, I will not be handing over my life, liberty, or property to you today. He runs away. I call and report to the police. Somebody tried to rob me. I drew my weapon, and without firing my weapon, I scared the criminal off and am unharmed. Here's his description. I think you should make every effort to find this criminal and prevent him from victimizing someone who is less prepared and competent than myself. Right? It is a courtesy. It is a courtesy to have concern for the less adequate. Go get him. And then the cops show up and arrest me for brandishing. Now, it's likely that I could beat that in court. But here's the other thing that you need to understand about cops who are engaged in unlawful activity. Right? You have to walk this line very carefully if you ever find yourself in a bad situation with a police officer. Cop pulls you over, or no, let's stay away from traffic rules, because those get even muddier. Let's talk about the First Amendment audits. I think Georgia Constitution Media is still watching. I hope you're still with us, brother, because I'm about to talk about that a little bit. Because it's a good example of where a bad police interaction can happen. The First Amendment auditors are out there filming whatever they can see from public places. Now, the First Amendment, freedom of the press, and this has been relitigated in the Supreme Court many, many times, and many other lower court decisions. You have the right to film in public. You are the press. And if some shithead cop comes up and asks you for your press credentials, I mean, I could point to mine, but that's because I had to get White House press credentials. Outside of a specific organization issuing credentials for a specific event, which is a private event, there is no such thing as a credentialing body for press credentials in the United States. If you choose to pick up a camera, write a story, whatever, you are press. And your right to do that is guaranteed by the Constitution. Now, go watch some of those auditing videos, and here's what you'll see. The officers will approach a citizen standing on a sidewalk filming a police station from public. And first they'll ask for ID. At that point, they haven't done anything wrong. If you politely refuse and they go about their way, you're good to go. But many times these officers will push and push and push. They'll make stuff up. They'll say, no, if I ask for ID, you have to give it to me. No. A police officer has no authority over you unless you're committing a crime. They are not authority. They are law enforcement. And that difference is extraordinary. Right? And you'll hear cops say things like, I have the right to ask you for ID. Yes, you have the right under the First Amendment to say words. You can ask me for ID. That's fine. And I have the right, assumed from the unenumerated penumbra of rights assumed necessary to the practice of the 5 rights enumerated in the First Amendment, to free association. I don't have to give you shit. And that's before I even get into my Fourth Amendment right to be secure in my person, property, papers, and properties. Now, That said, that encounter moves forward and eventually ends in an arrest. They arrest you on some BS. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen auditors arrested on public property for trespassing. Now, it's not that you cannot be trespassed from public property, but in order to be trespassed from public property, like, for example, a police station lobby, not the secure back offices, but the public lobby, or a post office, a public government building, a public lobby. In order to be trespassed from one of those, you have to commit a crime. Right? If you're just there doing your business, like filming the public officials, you're good. You get thrown out of there, you have to commit a crime for them to be able to trespass you legally. That's the law. And they flub that one often. It's not just that I've seen several cases where people get arrested for that. I've seen several cases where the police and the city where it happened have paid out gigantic sums in settlements because they broke that citizen's constitutional rights. They've committed a federal crime under U.S. Code, U.S. Section 18, Section 242. Repression of rights under color of law. Restriction of rights under color of law. It also violates a separate censorship statute called prior restraint, anything where you're being prevented from performing the duties or functions of the press. Okay, you go to court, you beat that beef, you beat that rap, and all's good. What about my time? How many days did I spend in jail on that arrest, waiting for a bond hearing? What about the story that I was unable to finish recording because I was interrupted by a criminal in a uniform who took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and when he raised his hand with the expectation that he would defend, with our expectation that he would then defend his country, defend the Constitution of the United States, when he raised his hand and took an oath to the Constitution, instead of raising his hand and deciding that he would deploy, engage in close combat, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America, he said, nah, I'm going to go blue instead of green. I'm just going to hang around here, and I'm going to defend the Constitution by harassing citizens. Because look at the numbers. National murder solve rate around 50%. They're ineffectual. The police are ineffectual. And what they managed to do, deprivation of rights under color of law. Thank you, anarchy. Damn, I hate it when words get away from. I've got so many damn words. I've got the best words. But there's just so damn many. They're like my kids. You just can't keep up with them all running around in circles like that. Good Lord. Yeah, 2 kids are wonderful. At 3, the little bastards have you outnumbered. And I've got 4. I love them. God, I love them. No little bastards in this house, by the way. We met, got married, and then had children. That's how we do. So, you know what, Anarchy? I'm going to give you a top comment today just because you made me chuckle. And derailed my ass. Oh. Okay, you know what? I'm going to come back to the sovereign citizens thing in a second, Anarchy. I'm going to talk about that for just a second. Let me finish with this. Once you've been arrested by the police under false pretenses, under an illegitimate charge, there's a good chance you take them to court. The charges are vitiated. The officers involved are reprimanded, hopefully fired. Any officer who's ever been charged under 18242 should never, ever, ever be allowed to, and this goes for any public official who, under color of law, has engaged in the deprivation of someone's civil rights. They should be absolutely 100% barred from all public service now and forever. If I had my way, it would be an automatic felony. Period. Right? At the level that we're talking about with the cops, illegally arresting U.S. citizens engaged in lawfully protected activities, which is happening a lot. That's still a federal misdemeanor unless they cause bodily harm in the course of the deprivation of rights, and then it becomes a federal felony. And that under that law, depending on the severity of the restrictive means used to deprive the rights, the maximum penalty is death. That is there on the book. But what about the rest of my time? I might walk away with a 20, 30, 50. I've seen some of these $500,000 settlements come out of those cases, and that's all well and good, but I still lost time. Right? And I'm just going to keep going down rabbit holes now. I've still lost time. I've talked about this many times on the show. If I had my way, right, you consider the non-aggression principle. If you examine a crime where something has gone very badly, you can examine the chain of events, and it began with someone initiating force. I'm a big fan of the use of force. I am. Anybody who ever said violence never solves anything, well, they're wrong. We don't disagree. We don't have a difference of opinion here, right? This is like saying I need water to survive, and someone else says, no, you can survive without imbibing fluids. We don't have a difference of opinion. You're wrong. So, that said, if I had my way, there would be no crime enumerated in the law that was not considered a degree of murder. Right? The first rule you're supposed to learn in law school is crime is harm. So no victim, no crime. For example, you want to smoke a little pot? The only way they managed to make that illegal in the rhetorical arguments is by arguing that society itself is the victim of your misconduct. No. If you want to tell me that society is the victim of someone's misconduct, you need to point to something like, I don't know, a biologically engineered weapon that's designed to wipe out several million people across the world under nefarious circumstances. Okay, now society is the victim, I guess, but really, I can point to actual victims in that case. Society is not the victim. I'll have to take this show on the road sometime and go down this particular line of thought with reference to Kierkegaard's The Crowd in the future. But for now, society's not the victim. So, falsely imprisoning somebody, you've taken away a piece of their life. You've murdered them just a tiny little bit. And that's the thing. You could settle me out of court for the national deficit to make me whole after I've been arrested falsely, illegitimately, incarcerated unjustly, lost, let's call it a week of my time. You could settle me out for the national deficit, but you cannot give me back my week. You cannot restore the life that you stole from me. You cannot unmurder me. So, if I had my way, any violation of 18 U.S.C. 242, deprivation of rights under color of law, would absolutely 100% be a felony. And that would be the end of any career in government work that this officer ever engaged in. Ever. Okay. I gave you a 50% extra show today, y'all. I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Y'all be safe out there. Don't drive drink. Don't fry bacon naked. Know your rights. Right, guys? If you haven't done this already, download a copy of the U.S. Constitution on your phone, right? There are apps for it, or you can just download it as a Word document or a PDF. Put a copy of it on your phone. And unless you are dug into some really solid Dostoevsky, Kierkegaard, Orwell, something like that at the moment, read the Constitution on the shitter. And I say read it on the shitter because you shouldn't be, stop. You go to pop a squat, stop wasting your time looking at Facebook, Twitter, all that garbage. No, read the Constitution. I challenge every one of you watching the show today. By the end of this year, I want you to have read the Constitution from the preamble to the ejection. That would be the 25th Amendment. At a minimum, twice before Christmas. I'm not saying memorize it, right? I don't need you to quote me chapter and verse like Article 3, Section 3 details tyranny. Well, tyranny, because tyranny is treason, but details treason, which is the only crime enumerated in the Constitution and for whose penalty is death, assuming two witnesses to a credible act to provide aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States of America or to overthrow her. Read the Constitution, at least be familiar with it. And I would say I would love for everyone to be able to at least tell me what rights are covered by each of the first 10 amendments, if not cite the first 10, actually quote the first 10 amendments, but at least get your head around the big six, right? There are 5 that are enumerated in the First Amendment. The right to speech, the right to free worship, the right of the press, the right to peacefully assemble, and the right to redress the government, to petition the government for redress of grievances. Asking a police officer, for example, for a copy of the complaint form so that you can file a complaint form against a bad police officer, that is a protected right. That is a guaranteed right. If you ask a cop to, he needs to at least direct you to the process, because you have the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. Of course, the Second Amendment, keep and bear arms, right? The Third Amendment, I'm not real concerned about being forced to bivouac soldiers in my home, largely because, well, if there's an invading army, I'm probably not going to be here. But yeah, that's the only amendment that may actually be somewhat antiquated now, all things considered. Which is not to say I do away with it. Fourth Amendment, you're securing your person, property, and papers. Fifth Amendment, you can't be required to courting of soldiers. And then she said the quartering of soldiers, and I suddenly just pictured, hey, I got a bad guy here, right? And he's drawn and quartered, and then you're stuffing him into bags for the freezer. Courting. Not courting. The better of us are married already. So, Fifth Amendment, the protection against self-incrimination. The Sixth Amendment, the right to a fair, speedy trial, and to have the witnesses and evidence against you presented. The Seventh Amendment, I think the Seventh Amendment has to do with controversies and the amount above $20 being guaranteed before a jury of the peers. That may be the Sixth Amendment as well. Eighth Amendment is the protection against cruel and unusual punishment or excessive bails. Like, for example, the January 6th protesters who have not been given bail at all in 6 months, over 6 months. No bail is excessive bail, right? And to be clear, we're not saying that these guys haven't been presented. We're not saying that these guys have been rejected bail, right? That would be different. It is lawful for a judge to say, your bail is being rejected or denied because you're a flight risk, you're this or you're that. But to not even be given a hearing on bail for over 6 months, that is an absolute violation, right, of the Eighth Amendment. It is functionally the same as torture. Trish says right of trial by jury is the 7th. Okay, yeah, the 6th is you've got the right to face your accusers and evidence presented against you. And the right to counsel, I think, is also under the 6th. And then the 7th is matters of controversy over $20 dealt with by a jury or your peers, guaranteed. 8th, cruel and unusual punishment. The 9th Amendment. The 9th Amendment basically says that those rights enumerated by the Constitution are not a comprehensive list of the rights. There are other rights that are obvious to be assumed that belong to you as a human being granted by your Creator that just are not enumerated. And that honestly, that was even part of the argument. They call it the nebulous penumbra of unenumerated rights. Mentioned by the 9th Amendment, assumed from the 1st and 14th Amendment, is how the court came to the conclusion in Roe v. Wade that while you do not have the right to murder your child, you have the right to privacy between you and your doctor, so nobody's allowed to ask you or your doctor if you murdered your child. And then, of course, the 10th Amendment says that all rights not here enumerated and explicitly delegated to the government, to the federal government, are retained to the state, to the states, and to the people thereunder. So if the Constitution doesn't say, hey, federal government, you can do X, then it can't. The vast majority of federal laws are blatantly unconstitutional. And that's something that everybody should understand clearly. And now I've given you almost 100% bonus this weekend. So, sex, drugs, rock and roll, videotape, firearms, and farm animals. No two at the same time. And y'all be safe this weekend. I love you, and I'll see you Monday morning.